I see like a lot of people on already. I think we can probably get started. So you can hear me, right? Is the audio
Yes,
working? Okay.
yes.
Okay. So today, before I share my screen and actually go into things, I just wanted to sort of introduce the concept of what I'm gonna do today. So basically, we've talked about like using AI for code before. Leo had done a session on like GitHub Copilot with like automatic code completions and then some other R packages. And Geo had done use like Google AI Studio for a particular use case. Today I'm going to talk about sort of like I'm going to talk mostly about GitHub Copilot agent mode. So basically that's like the idea is using like having an AI agent directly have access to your files and you can command it to make changes directly and stuff like that. So let me start actually sharing some of the content for today. So I'm going to talk about two options. So these days, there's like a huge amount of LLMs, and like there's a lot of different options. And I'm not really, I wouldn't call myself an expert in keeping up to date with, which ones are best and stuff like that for different use cases. But doing some exploring myself, I came upon a couple options that I thought were promising for using LLMs. And one of them I think is like Claude. So Claude is one of the, I guess it's a model from, well, there's multiple models from Anthropic that are called Claude, but I think it's one of the promising sort of state of the art models. So I think one option in this space I just want to mention is like Claude Code. So Claude Code is, let me sort of go through like the example from Anthropic themselves. So basically, it's a couple things. One, it's mainly a command line tool, actually. So from the command line, basically, it can access your files in your code files in a repository. You can sort of give a prompt where in this case, they're giving a prompt describing like basically an entire like ASCII art application. It gives it a lot of details, which generally you have to, I mean, in general, you're going to have to give models a bunch of details in order if you want a detailed application, right? So they show from the terminal, you can sort of give this prompt and then it will generate like oh my gosh, I didn't expect there to be sounds. Okay. Anyways, just a sort of a random application that it sort of built from this prompt, directly modifying the files. So I think so this is a premium tool. I think you go down and at some point they describe the billing. So I'm not sure if this is really for like I guess there's a $17 option. Just to mention the options, you don't really there's no really free tier here as far as I know. But I think it is sort of state of the art and a good option if you're interested in playing with some of the newer model LLMs. So they do have like a $17 per month option. I believe they also have an option where you can directly there's like a subscription model, and I think a lot of these tools also have like a sort of per request model where like the more API requests you make, the more you get charged and stuff like that. So I think this is like one of one of the options I was looking at. Now another option I think we've talked about where is it? Sorry, I have it somewhere in here. GitHub Copilot. Obviously, we've talked about the free version so far. And so we've talked about completions, right? We've talked about code completions with GitHub Copilot. But I guess we haven't really talked much about this like agent mode that they're calling it. So that's what I was going to cover today and actually dive into sort of a real example of how I used it to solve a particular problem. So you get 50 of these requests for free. I ended up doing a free trial of this like pro option, which is only $10 a month. So, and that gives you access to like more models, including like some of the Claude models like Claude Sonnet, Sonnet 4, as well as many others, GPT-5, Gemini Pro. And then you get basically unlimited of these agent mode requests with the caveat that you can use basically a model that's not quite as smart for if you only get unlimited requests with one of the like less powerful models. So if you're using like Claude Sonnet or Claude Opus or something like that, you get I'm still sort of unclear about how much you get per month, but yeah, I guess the good thing about Copilot here is that it's access to multiple models, so you don't have to specifically if commit to one like Anthropic subscription or something or Google Gemini subscription. And you get code completions and this agent mode all in one. So like Claude Code is sort of like agent mode, I guess, but it's its own thing. And so I think this was basically those are like two options I was looking at. And so now that we've covered these options, I also wanted to mention like, so I'm going to talk today about using it in VS Code, which is my preferred editor. I also tried to look into RStudio and Positron, since obviously that's what a lot of people here use. So currently I guess the results are a little unfortunate for there's for RStudio, there was this like there's basically where is this? I found this issue and basically the summary of it is that they were saying like, oh, well, VS Code has this feature where you can integrate GitHub Copilot chat directly in and it can interact with your files directly. So can we get that implemented in RStudio? And basically they said like, no, we're not we're not gonna we don't plan to do that. I think it's somewhere down, where is this? We are not planning to add this chat pane in RStudio. We are trying to implement support in the chat R package, which Leo had also talked about in a previous RStats. But my understanding is that chat so far, the most it has is sort of like a shiny app type thing that doesn't really have direct access to your files. That was my impression from. I saw a comment that sort of pointed to that. Yeah, here it is. So like at the time of this comment, the latest. Although, okay, to be fair, this is a pretty old comment. So the latest chat R is isolated and does not see any files or code that is open in the IDE, which is sort of like a key feature, I think, of this agent mode type thing. So I guess, unfortunately, what I'm going to be talking about today is not really directly usable with RStudio. With Positron, so you don't get GitHub Copilot, you get it for inline code completions, but this agent mode type thing they use specifically have made it work for Anthropic. So you get Claude. And so it's not directly what I'm going to be talking about today, but I guess it's worth mentioning that Positron has some promising options that are quite similar to what I'm going to be talking about today. So yeah, I guess that's the sort of the basic summary is that you have this agent mode with Anthropic and then the code completions we've talked about so far. Yeah, they mentioned, only Claude is available in the chat, but yeah, I guess this is mostly just setting it up. And so yeah, today I'll be talking about VS Code. I think we can sort of transition into doing stuff with that now. So let me pull over an actual example here. So actually, yeah, I guess we can start here. So the summary of this was that, so here I have cloned this template project that we sometimes use for sort of setting up code organization here. And so it just has some basic scripts. So it has some scripts, some shell scripts that are properly numbered and everything. And then it has something like a run all script, which we've talked about before. And so, yeah, we want this to be sort of a nice example for that you can start other projects at LIBD with. And so one of the things Leo had pointed out to me is that like it's a bit outdated in some ways. Actually, I have fixed this already, just to be clear, but for today's demo, I went back in the repository history to show what it looked like. And so it's outdated in the sense that it uses SGE jobs since we now use Slurm jobs for creating some of these shell scripts and stuff. There's a few different references to SGE jobs that needed to be changed to Slurm jobs. So that's sort of what I was going to talk about with like to sort of demonstrate this agent mode. So actually, let me pull up. I'm going to move. I guess this would be nicer if I had two screens to share at the same time, but I'll have code on the monitor I'm sharing, and I'm just going to grab a couple links that I'm going to use for 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 this demo. So just a second while I get this set up, and we can get started. But and also, in the meanwhile, feel free if there's any questions so far about what I've discussed, obviously feel free to ask away. Okay, so basically here we can go ahead and demonstrate this agent mode. So very simple example, you can just ask it, since it has access to the files, you can ask it pretty much any basic question. So we could say like, maybe make this a little bigger, although there's not too much space on this monitor, but we can try and fit this in here. So what does this project do, I guess? This is one thing you can ask. And I've noticed that some of the prompts can be quite slow to actually react. So yeah, here it is. This is a template for organizing data science or bioinformatics projects following best practices for reproducibility and collaboration. It mentions stuff about raw data, process data, and code. Easier to back up important files like raw data. It doesn't say that, but that's what it means. Reproduce analyses. And so yeah, right away, it sort of just it knows what files to access specifically. So with some models, you might be used to, if you've done this sort of thing, you might be used to sort of adding context manually. But the cool thing about this agent mode is that it knows from your specific request which files to read. Um, yeah, so you can ask it basic questions like that. So now I'm going to say something like, this project has outdated references to SGE jobs, whereas um, use the replacement Slurm jobs. And actually, I think for some of these, since these are sort of packages we've designed and pretty recently, it's not going to know what those packages are without you telling it sort of. So a cool thing it can do is it can actually follow links. So you can give it like a link to the documentation, which I'm going to do. SGE jobs, I'm also going to do something similar. So that has a little bit of context. So it has references to SGE jobs, whereas we now use the replacement Slurm jobs. Can you find files where there are outdated references? And by the way, right now I'm just using the sort of the not very smart GPT 4.1 model. And there's some, like I mentioned, there's like Claude Sonnet 4, GPT 5, and other better models. But so right away here it mentions, okay, the README, then there's a bunch of files where there's outdated references. Um, so I guess the first thing, let's say I don't want to manually look through I guess in this case, I will mention that this is a small project and maybe agent mode is not quite a good use case. If it were a larger project where there's lots of files where it would be a lot of work to sort of skim through and maybe it would be hard to search by keyword, maybe searching e-jobs would not be sufficient if there's sort of references to, like if the keyword search doesn't match necessarily and you had a big project, this agent mode would be a lot more useful than what I'm doing today. But I think should still be a good demonstration. Although actually, it did to search, it actually did construct its own manual search with these terms. But okay, so let's continue. So I'm going to say, propose, let's say take one R script and modify it to use Slurm job. So we can so it took the first R script. I don't know why it read this shell script actually. So here it is in VS Code, it comes up with this red and green syntax, which is showing, the diff basically. So by reading the documentation, by the way, I tried this earlier yesterday just to experiment with different things. And if you don't provide it the documentation, it doesn't know to change its queue to partition because how would it know the specific parameters, right? For a sort of a new package. So this edit looks good so far. Partition equals BlueJ. I'm gonna go through. Let's see if it caught. Yes, it did catch on the bottom to change the Slurm jobs. So let's keep those. So if you actually run this commands right now, this is probably, I think, sort of like a bug with Slurm jobs, but if you run this, it doesn't create the log directory relative to the shell script. It creates it in the current directory. So for now, let's just say I want to also add this like create logdir equals false. So we also are getting the code completions, but yeah, false. So now let's say I'm going to save this and then I'm going to say, now modify the remaining R scripts following the example in code/1. Basically, just telling it to explicitly use this example instead of, in other words, also include the create logdir option. Typing out this is a little annoying. I'll give it a brief prompt here. So now it's read the remaining two R scripts, and then let's see, it's still doing some work over here. Okay, now it says they're updated, so I'm gonna go take a look. And did not follow the example I told it. So maybe I wasn't clear, but I wanted it to say create logdir equals false also, but that's what I meant by following the example. And I think, I think it was clear. So I'm going to try a better model. And basically, I'm going to say try again. And the interesting thing here is that I'm not sure how they've sort of implemented this, but it seems to, when you change models, it seems like the newer model does have access to the previous conversation. And so it knows what I mean when I say try again. It's not going to be like, try what again, you know? So now using Claude. So, I might have had to actually reject these options before it. Okay, so let me reject these. Undo, undo. Because I did get this to work. I did get this to work yesterday. No, I'm adding please because to not be rude, since I just asked it a second time. Last time I do have better experience with Claude than I do with interesting. It's still not getting it because maybe I'm just not actually being clear, but okay, whatever. We'll keep this. Oh, wait, hold on. It's still going. I'm not sure what it's doing here. Okay. Whatever, we'll keep this for now. And so, since this isn't sort of the real example, so let's say I'm looking through and I notice other things are outdated with this. So normally I would actually just rerun the slurm jobs command to recreate these shell scripts. But I noticed the version of R is outdated. Also, for some reason, the R script is, I think I made this mistake earlier. It's not actually running the R script. It's just running this R command. So we want the shell script to run the R command. So let's see if we can describe that here to as a prompt. So I'm saying use kind of R 4.5. Also, the shell script should invoke the corresponding. Okay, so yeah, basically change conda R to conda 4.5. The R script command should invoke the corresponding R script, not use in call session info. Can you change this in all shell scripts? So yeah, now you can actually see sort of what it's doing, searching for all shell scripts by using this glob pattern. Yeah, so this is exactly what I wanted to do, right? I mean, this is sort of a simple example maybe, but it's maybe more useful when you have a bunch of different shell scripts, right? If it was a huge repository, again, this would be more useful. So yeah, and then Claude is usually good about sort of explaining its reasoning, I feel like. So yeah, and telling you exactly what it did, changing the module, changing this R script command to the correct shell script. So this looks good. This did the exact same thing. GG pairs.r. Yep, that's right. And same with this. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other features that I haven't used. So I've showed the links. I've showed that it has access to your files. Oh, another important thing I do want to mention is that the really cool thing is that this is all in JHPCE. This is not local. So it's actually combining with the remote SSH extension that you can use with VS Code, and it's accessing the JHPCE files directly. So you can do this locally or at JHPCE pretty seamlessly. That's another benefit of, I guess, using VS Code here. Because normally, you'd have something like CyberDuck, and that wouldn't really work for what we're showing here. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of people are doing a lot more creative things that I've done here, but I wanted to. This can be potentially really powerful. I'm still scratching the surface here, but I think this is sort of the. I guess okay. One more thing. I think it can also commit. I'm just gonna ask if it can commit these changes. I'm not sure. I haven't tried this. I'm pretty sure it said it can do this, but I'm not. Or I'm pretty sure it can. I forget how it integrates with like oh, what? It has to manually run. Oh, you have to, I guess maybe there's some setting where you can maybe allow it to do anything. I'm just gonna do this. I'm not gonna actually push these obviously, but just locally I'm gonna do this. So it does know what files to add. I'm curious about its commit messages here. Git commit, update from SE Slurm jobs and fix shell scripts. Oh, and then it gives a much more detailed bullet bullet list, change key parameter partition, conda 3.4 to 3.5, R script commands to invoke the correct files instead of session info. That sounds pretty good to me. That's exactly what we did. Normally, of course, you wouldn't put this all in one commit, but just to show what it did. Okay, and then it sort of explains what it did, even though I already saw what it did. So it's not super helpful, but they've been committed. And so, okay, so that's how it works. Apparently it can actually access the terminal. So there's a bunch of powerful things this can do, basically. I still am new with, but hopefully this was like a interesting, if you haven't been using like something like agent mode, I think hopefully this was a cool intro. I think that's all I wanted to cover today. So